It was midnight at Collins Defense Group headquarters. 25-year-old CEO Evelyn Collins had just stepped out of her private elevator when three men in black tactical gear with masks and weapons blocked her vehicle. Their movements were precise, professional, clearly mercenaries. They forced her from the car, zip-tied her wrists, and covered her eyes with a hood. Hours later, Evelyn sat bound in an abandoned warehouse, feeling hopeless. Suddenly, she heard movement from above. A shadow descended silently into the space. In mere seconds, he neutralized all three captors with military precision. When dim light crossed his face, Evelyn gasped. It was Jack, her husband in name only. The man she had relegated to working security to repay some family debt. The man she had never once acknowledged publicly. The man who had just saved her life. She had spent years looking down on this man, never knowing he had saved her life not just tonight, but once before, long ago. Evelyn Collins had become CEO of America's fifth-largest defense contractor at the age of 22, following her father's tragic helicopter accident. Robert Collins had built the empire from nothing, transforming a small engineering firm into a behemoth that supplied critical technology to the Pentagon and NATO allies. In boardrooms filled with military contractors twice her age, Evelyn fought to prove herself worthy of her position. She earned a reputation for being brilliant but cold, a woman who had sacrificed warmth for respect in a male-dominated industry. Her staff called her Ice Queen behind her back, though none questioned her competence or dedication. What they didn't see were the sleepless nights, the weight of decisions that affected national security, and the profound loneliness that accompanied her position. Beneath her tailored suits and perfect composure was a woman haunted by her father's final request, a deathbed promise she had reluctantly fulfilled. "Marry Jack Dawson," her father had whispered, clutching her hand with his remaining strength. "Our family owes him a life debt. This is how you repay it." She had agreed, not out of love or even understanding, but out of obligation. The marriage was nothing more than paperwork, a legal arrangement she had kept strictly private. Not a single photo of the ceremony existed. She had never moved into his apartment, never introduced him to her social circle, never acknowledged him when they passed in the company hallways. To Evelyn, Jack was simply an inconvenient obligation, a relic of some mysterious past her father had never fully explained. She had generously offered him a security position at the lowest level of her company, considering this sufficient payment for whatever debt her father believed they owed. Jack Dawson lived in the shadows of his own life. At 36, his body still maintained the disciplined strength of his military years, but his eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. His apartment in a modest neighborhood across town was sparsely furnished, a place to sleep rather than a home. Few knew that Master Sergeant Jack Dawson had once been among the elite of the elite, a Delta Force operator with a decorated service record that remained mostly classified. His team had conducted operations in 14 countries, neutralizing threats before they ever reached American soil, until Kandahar, the mission that haunted his dreams. 4 hostages, aid workers, had died because of a judgment call he had made. The official report absolved him of wrongdoing, citing impossible circumstances and conflicting intelligence. But Jack knew the truth. He had hesitated for 1.4 seconds at a critical moment, and 4 innocent lives had been the cost. He'd left the military shortly after, carrying his guilt like armor. When Robert Collins, an old military contact, offered him a chance to start over through an arrangement with his daughter, Jack had accepted, not out of desire, but from a lack of alternatives. Now he patrolled the lower floors of Collins Defense Group, watching from a distance as Evelyn built her empire. He endured the sidelong glances of executives who wondered why a man of his obvious capability remained in such a menial position. He absorbed Evelyn's casual disdain without complaint. It was, he believed, a fitting penance. The ride back to the city was silent. Jack drove with military precision, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, trying to reconcile the man beside her with the efficient predator she had witnessed in the warehouse. "You should go to a hospital," Jack finally said, his voice flat. "I'm fine," she replied automatically, though her wrists were raw from the restraints. They may have drugged you. Standard procedure. You would know about standard procedure for kidnappings because... She couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. Jack's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Pull over, Evelyn demanded suddenly. To her surprise, he complied without question, guiding the car to the shoulder of the empty highway. Who are you? She asked, turning to face him fully. And don't give me that security guard nonsense. I saw what you did back there. That wasn't mall cop training. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the rhythmic clicking of the hazard lights. I'm exactly who your father said I was, Jack finally answered. Someone who owed him. Now, I'm repaying that debt by keeping you safe. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight. His tone made it clear the discussion was over. You need rest and probably a medical evaluation. We can talk tomorrow. She wanted to argue but found herself too exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her body heavy with fatigue. The next morning, Evelyn canceled all her meetings. Instead of going to the office, she found herself parked outside Jack's apartment building in a nondescript rental car. The neighborhood was working class, neat but weathered, a far cry from her penthouse overlooking the river. She waited 3 hours before curiosity overcame her pride. The building had no doorman, no security system worth mentioning. His apartment was on the 3rd floor, 3C. The lock was surprisingly sophisticated, but the credit card trick she'd learned in college still worked. The door swung open to reveal a space that told her more about her husband than 3 years of coexistence ever had. The apartment was Spartan, but not unlived in. A worn leather couch faced a modestly sized television. A bookshelf held volumes on military history, international relations, and surprisingly, classic literature. Hemingway, Dostoevsky, Conrad. What caught her attention, however, was the wall beside his bed. Photos were arranged in a precise grid, men in combat gear, arms around each other's shoulders, their faces young but their eyes old. In some, Jack stood among them, looking more alive than she had ever seen him. On his bedside table sat a worn leather case. Inside, she found military decorations, bronze stars, purple hearts, and other medals she couldn't identify. The dissonance between these honors and the man who silently patrolled her building's lobby was jarring. But it was what she found in his closet that truly shook her. A locked footlocker yielded to her persistent efforts, revealing newspaper clippings and a yellowed photograph. The headline read, "Local hero saves child from vicious dog attack." The photograph showed a teenage boy, his arm bandaged but smiling proudly next to a hospital bed where a small girl lay recovering. Evelyn's heart stopped. The girl was her age 7, the summer before 3rd grade. And the boy was unmistakably a young Jack Dawson. She sank to the floor, the photograph trembling in her hands. This was the debt her father had spoken of. Jack hadn't just saved her life yesterday. He had saved it nearly 20 years ago. And she had spent 3 years treating him like he was beneath her notice. Jack returned to his apartment at precisely 6:17 p.m., his movements betraying no surprise at finding Evelyn seated on his couch. He simply hung his jacket on the hook by the door and regarded her with those unreadable eyes. "Breaking and entering is still a crime, even for CEOs," he said mildly. She held up the photograph. "Were you ever going to tell me?" Something flickered across his face so quickly she might have imagined it. No. The simple honesty of his answer caught her off guard. She had expected denials, excuses, perhaps even an attempt at leveraging this revelation. Instead, he moved to the kitchen and filled a kettle with water, his back to her. "Why not?" she pressed. "It wasn't relevant." "Not relevant?" Evelyn stood, anger rising in her throat. "You saved my life when I was a child. My father made me marry you because of it. And you didn't think that was something I should know?" Jack turned, leaning against the counter. For the first time, she noticed the weariness in his stance, the slight favor of his left leg. "Would it have changed anything?" he asked quietly. "Would you have treated me differently if you'd known? Or would you have just resented being indebted to someone you consider beneath you?" The kettle whistled, saving her from having to answer immediately. Jack prepared 2 cups of tea with mechanical precision, handing one to her without asking if she wanted it. "Who were those men last night?" she asked, changing the subject. "Professionals, Hired by someone who knows enough about you to bypass your security protocols. He took a sip of his tea. I'm still working on identifying them. And how exactly does a security guard have the resources to do that? Jack's expression hardened. I wasn't always a security guard. Clearly. She gestured toward the wall of photographs. Delta Force? His eyebrows rose slightly, the first genuine reaction she'd provoked. Your father never told you? My father told me nothing, except that I needed to marry you, that our family owed you a life debt. She placed her untouched tea on the coffee table. I want the truth, Jack, all of it. For a long moment, he studied her, as if weighing something in his mind. Then he sighed, a sound so human it surprised her. I wanted to be someone who could protect the world, he said finally, his voice low. Instead, I failed. When it mattered most. He told her about Kandahar, about the hostages, about the 1.4 seconds that had cost 4 lives and haunted his dreams every night since. Your father was my commanding officer before he left to start his company, Jack explained. He's the one who recruited me for Delta. When everything fell apart, he was the only one who still believed in me. About the dog attack? When we were kids? A ghost of a smile touched Jack's lips. Pure coincidence. I was 16, working at the park for summer money. You were being your typical stubborn self, wandering off from your nanny. When that Rottweiler broke its chain, he shrugged. Anyone would have done the same. Not everyone would have taken 47 stitches protecting a stranger's child, Evelyn countered softly. Your father never forgot it. When my military career imploded, he tracked me down, said he could give me purpose again. Jack's eyes met hers directly. The marriage was his idea of ensuring I'd always be close enough to protect you, even after he was gone. The weight of this revelation settled over Evelyn. All this time she had believed herself to be fulfilling an obligation, never realizing she was the one being protected. Why did you agree to it? She asked. To being treated like you were nothing? Jack was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he did, his voice was barely audible. Because I deserved worse. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt tears gathering in her eyes. Not for herself, but for this man who had carried so much alone. No one has the right to carry their wounds alone forever, she whispered. Something broke in Jack's carefully maintained facade. He turned away, but not before she saw the moisture in his eyes. In that moment, Evelyn made a decision that would change both their lives. She would no longer live separated from the man who had twice saved her life. It was time to heal them both. The change didn't happen overnight. Evelyn began with small gestures, having Jack's security clearance elevated, moving him to her personal detail, acknowledging him when they passed in hallways. Her executive team noticed immediately, eyebrows raising at the sudden promotion of the mysterious security guard. Rumors spread through the company like wildfire. Some suggested an affair. Others, more scandalously, whispered that perhaps he was blackmailing the untouchable CEO. None suspected the truth. 2 weeks after the kidnapping, Evelyn arrived at Jack's apartment with 2 suitcases. What's this? He asked, blocking the doorway. I'm moving in, she stated matter-of-factly. When he didn't respond, she added, We are legally married, after all. Evelyn, I'm not asking permission, Jack. For the first time since she'd known him, Jack looked genuinely uncertain. Why? She pushed past him into the apartment. Because I'm tired of living a lie. Because you deserve better than what I've given you. Because, she hesitated, then finished softly, because I want to know the man who saved me. Twice. Living together was an adjustment for both of them. Evelyn, who had never cooked a meal in her adult life, found herself learning to navigate Jack's modest kitchen. Jack, accustomed to solitude, had to adapt to sharing his space with a woman who took video calls at 4 a.m. with overseas markets and left files scattered across every surface. Yet somehow, they fit. Jack's nightmares came less frequently when Evelyn was there. Evelyn found herself sleeping through the night for the first time in years, the weight of her responsibilities temporarily lifted in his presence. They developed rituals. Coffee on the small balcony each morning, takeout and classic films on Sundays. She taught him about corporate strategy. He showed her how to defend herself from common attacks. Slowly, the apartment transformed. Evelyn brought color to the space, throw pillows, art for the walls, plants that thrived under her surprisingly attentive care. Jack watched in quiet amazement as this woman he had observed from afar for 3 years revealed herself to be nothing like the cold CEO he thought he knew. One evening, as they sat on opposite ends of the couch, a documentary playing unwatched between them, Jack asked the question that had been building for weeks. "Why did you hate me so much before?" Evelyn stared into her wineglass, weighing her words carefully. "I didn't hate you. I hated what you represented, which was my father's final control over my life." She met his eyes. He controlled everything, my education, my career path, even the company I inherited. The marriage felt like his way of controlling me from beyond the grave. Jack nodded slowly. "I understand. But I was wrong," she continued, "about his motivations, about you." She placed her glass on the coffee table. "He wasn't controlling me. He was protecting me the only way he knew how." Robert was good at that, Jack agreed softly. Protecting people. A comfortable silence settled between them, broken only when Evelyn spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry, Jack, for how I treated you." He looked at her for a long moment, then simply nodded. "I know. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was acknowledgement. And for now, that was enough." Over the following weeks, Jack began accompanying Evelyn to certain business functions, not as her security detail, but as her husband. The first time they appeared together at a charity gala, the society pages exploded with speculation. Evelyn neither confirmed nor denied the rumors, simply introducing Jack as "my husband," without elaboration. Meanwhile, the investigation into the kidnapping attempt revealed a disturbing connection to one of Collins' defense group's competitors. The evidence wasn't conclusive enough for legal action, but it was sufficient to put Evelyn on high alert. Her security team was overhauled, with Jack's silent guidance. Though he maintained his official position as a security officer, everyone in the company now understood that Jack Dawson had the CEO's ear. What they didn't understand was why. The speculation ranged from the romantic to the conspiratorial. Only Evelyn's closest advisors knew the truth, that the quiet man with the watchful eyes had saved her life. Twice. One afternoon, Evelyn's executive assistant found her staring out the window of her office, a rare moment of stillness in her typically frenetic schedule. "Is everything all right, Miss Collins?" the woman asked, concerned by her boss's unusual behavior. Evelyn turned, her expression uncharacteristically open. "I've been thinking about legacy, Sandra. About what we leave behind." "The company is stronger than ever," Sandra assured her. "Your legacy is secure." "That's not the legacy I mean," Evelyn replied softly. That evening, she asked Jack to accompany her to the cemetery where her father was buried. They stood in silence before the elaborate headstone, the wind rustling through the carefully manicured grounds. "I used to come here to argue with him," Evelyn admitted. "About the company. About you." Jack remained silent, offering her the space to continue. "I thought I knew what he wanted from me. Excellence. Success. The continuation of his empire." She shook her head slowly. "But maybe what he wanted most was just for me to be safe. To be not alone." Jack's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining as the setting sun cast long shadows across the cemetery. "You would be proud of you," Jack said simply. Evelyn squeezed his hand. "I hope so, because I'm about to change everything." The Collins Defense Group's annual shareholder meeting was traditionally a state affair. Financial reports, project updates, polite applause. This year, however, the atmosphere hummed with anticipation. Rumors of a major announcement had circulated for weeks. Evelyn stood backstage, reviewing her notes one final time. She had prepared for this moment meticulously, knowing the ripples it would create throughout both the business and her personal life. "You don't have to do this," Jack said quietly from beside her. He wore a tailored suit for the occasion, his first since leaving the military. The transformation was striking. Gone was the invisible security guard, replaced by a man of unmistakable presence. "Yes," she replied, reaching for his hand. "I do." The lights dimmed, and Evelyn Collins walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause. For 30 minutes she delivered the expected content: Record profits, successful contracts, strategic acquisitions. The board members nodded approvingly from the front row. Then her tone shifted. Before we conclude, I have a personal announcement. The room quieted, sensing the change. For the past 3 years, many of you have speculated about my personal life, or lack thereof. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through the audience. Today, I'd like to introduce someone. She turned toward the wings. Jack, would you join me, please? Jack walked onto the stage, his military bearing evident in every step. Murmurs swept through the crowd as he took his place beside her. "This is Jack Dawson," Evelyn announced, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "My husband." The murmurs grew louder. Camera flashes popped from the press section. Many of you have seen him before, patrolling our lobbies as a security guard. What you didn't know, what I didn't fully appreciate until recently, is that Jack Dawson is not just my husband on paper. He is the man who has saved my life. Not once, but twice. She recounted the childhood incident. Then, in carefully vague terms, the recent kidnapping. With each word, the audience grew more rapt. Jack is a decorated former Delta Force operator who left the military after a mission went tragically wrong. My father, recognizing both his valor and his pain, brought him into our family. Evelyn turned to face Jack directly. "I stand before you all today to publicly acknowledge a shameful truth. I have treated this man, this hero, with contempt and dismissal. I relegated him to the shadows out of my own pride and misunderstanding." A hush fell over the room. This level of vulnerability from the famously composed CEO was unprecedented. "Today, I publicly apologize to my husband. Jack, I am sorry for my arrogance, my disrespect, and my failure to honor not just our marriage, but your inherent dignity as a human being who has sacrificed more than most of us can imagine." Jack's expression remained carefully neutral, but those closest to the stage could see the emotion in his eyes. A reporter called out from the press section, "Mr. Dawson, do you forgive her?" All eyes turned to Jack. For a man who had spent years avoiding attention, the spotlight was clearly uncomfortable. Yet when he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly through the room. "I never blamed her," he said simply. The simplicity and grace of his response broke something in the atmosphere. Applause erupted, tentative at first, then building to a thunderous ovation as Evelyn reached for Jack's hand and, in full view of shareholders, board members, and press, raised it to her lips in a gesture of profound respect. As the applause continued, Evelyn returned to the microphone. "In honor of my husband's service and the service of thousands like him who return from war carrying invisible wounds, I am proud to announce the formation of the Second Guard Foundation." She outlined her vision, a comprehensive program to support veterans struggling with PTSD, offering everything from therapy to job placement. The foundation would be funded initially with $20 million from her personal fortune. "Jack will serve as the foundation's executive director," she continued, bringing his first-hand understanding of the challenges veterans face to every aspect of our work. The announcement sent another wave of surprise through the audience. The press corps frantically scribbled notes. The board members exchanged glances, clearly processing the implications of their CEO's very public personal transformation. As they left the stage hand in hand, Jack leaned close to whisper in her ear, "You realize the tabloids will have a field day with this." Evelyn smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her usually serious face. "Let them. I'm done hiding what matters." In the months that followed, Evelyn Collins Dawson, as she now preferred to be called professionally, made changes that shocked both the business world and those who thought they knew her. She sold her Riverside penthouse. The proceeds, along with a significant portion of her personal fortune, went to expanding the Second Guard Foundation's reach. She and Jack moved into a modest brownstone near a community center in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods. The center had been on the verge of closure when Jack quietly approached its director with an offer. He would volunteer teaching self-defense classes to local youth if they could provide the space. What began as a small program with 3 reluctant teenagers quickly grew. Jack's patient instruction style and obvious expertise drew more children each week. Parents, who initially viewed the former soldier with suspicion, soon became his strongest advocates. For the first time in years, Jack found himself looking forward to each day. The weight of Kandahar didn't disappear. He knew it never would. But it became more bearable as he watched his students grow in confidence and skill. When one particularly troubled teen confided that Jack's classes had given him an alternative to joining a local gang, Jack felt something he had long thought lost: purpose. Evelyn, meanwhile, brought her business acumen to bear on the foundation. She leveraged her contacts throughout the defense industry to create job placement programs specifically designed for veterans with specialized skills. Companies that wanted contracts with Collins' defense group quickly learned that hiring second guard graduates was an unwritten prerequisite. She still ran her father's company with the same brilliance and determination. But the Ice Queen moniker faded as she revealed more of her authentic self to the world. Her quarterly earnings calls now included updates on the Foundation's work. The press began to speak of her as a model of corporate social responsibility, rather than just another cutthroat CEO. Their home became something neither had experienced before: a true sanctuary. Jack's military precision melded with Evelyn's eye for beauty. The bookshelves now held both his classics and her business texts, interspersed with photographs of their growing extended family of veterans and neighborhood children. They never spoke of love directly, neither of them comfortable with grand declarations, but it existed in the small moments, in the way Jack always rose before dawn to make coffee exactly as she preferred it, in how Evelyn had memorized the subtle signs of his approaching nightmares and knew precisely when to wake him, in their synchronized movements as they navigated their shared spaces. One evening, as winter settled over the city, they sat on their small porch despite the cold. Evelyn wrapped in a blanket, Jack seemingly impervious to the temperature. "Do you ever think about what would have happened," she asked suddenly, "if those men hadn't taken me that night?" Jack considered the question with his usual thoroughness. "We would have continued as we were, you building your empire, me watching from the shadows. Both of us alone," she added softly. He nodded, his breath visible in the cold air. "Both of us alone." They fell silent, watching as the first snowflakes of the season began to drift down from the night sky. "Thank you," Evelyn said finally, "not just for saving me, for giving me the chance to become this." Jack's hand found hers beneath the blanket. "And what is this?" She smiled, a genuine expression that still surprised him when he saw it. "Someone who remembers to be grateful. Someone who knows that the most important things aren't in boardrooms or bank accounts." The next morning, Jack taught his usual Saturday class at the community center. 20 children of various ages now attended regularly, many from families who couldn't afford formal martial arts training. Evelyn arrived near the end of the session, carrying containers of homemade snacks, another skill she had painstakingly developed over recent months. As she set up the food table, one of the younger girls, a recent addition to the program, approached her curiously. "Are you Mr. Jack's boss?" the child asked, eyeing Evelyn's still elegant clothes despite their simpler style. Evelyn smiled, watching as Jack demonstrated a gentle wrist escape to a circle of attentive children. "No," she replied softly. "I used to be someone who needed saving. Now, I choose to live with gratitude." The girl looked confused but nodded anyway, before running back to join the class. Evelyn stayed, leaning against the wall, content to watch as Jack passed on his hard-earned wisdom to a new generation. They had both been broken in different ways, she by expectations and isolation, he by guilt and loss. Yet somehow, in the space between their brokenness, they had found something whole. Not a fairy tale ending, but something better, something real.